Her ex-husband mocked her for being jobless, but when he saw her real identity, he turned pale. The soft glow of the morning sun filtered through the large windows of the elegant suburban home, casting a golden hue over the pristine marble floors. Olivia stood in the kitchen, carefully preparing breakfast as she had done every day for the past 7 years. She moved with quiet precision, her hands expertly setting the table, her mind lost in the routine that had defined her existence since she married Daniel. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the air, but the warmth of the scent did nothing to ease the growing coldness in her heart. She could hear the faint sound of footsteps descending the stairs, each step echoing with the distant, detached presence of the man she once believed was her soulmate. Daniel entered the kitchen, dressed impeccably in his tailored suit, his phone already in hand as he skimmed through emails. He barely spared her a glance, as though she were nothing more than a fixture in the house, something expected to be there but unworthy of acknowledgement. Olivia watched him silently, noting the way he carried himself, full of self-importance and arrogance. Once upon a time, he had adored her. He had looked at her as if she were the most precious thing in the world. But now, the love had faded into indifference, and that indifference was beginning to curdle into something far worse. "I'm going out tonight," he announced, finally looking up from his phone. "Dinner with some clients. Don't wait up." There was no apology in his tone, no softness, just the blunt dismissal of a man who no longer considered his wife a priority. Olivia swallowed the lump in her throat and nodded, unwilling to let him see how deeply his words stung. She knew what dinner with clients really meant. The late nights, the lipstick stains on his collars, the expensive perfume that wasn't hers. She had known for months, perhaps even years, but she had stayed. She had convinced herself that a marriage wasn't just about passion and romance but about commitment, about pushing through the hardships. But lately, she had begun to wonder, was she pushing through a hardship, or was she simply being pushed aside? As Daniel grabbed his briefcase and strode toward the door, he paused momentarily, his gaze sweeping over her with something akin to disdain. "You know, Olivia, sometimes I wonder what you even do all day. You have no job, no ambition. You just exist." His voice was casual, but the words struck like a slap. Then, just like that, he was gone, leaving behind only the echo of his cruelty. Olivia stood motionless, her breath hitching in her throat. The walls of the beautiful home she had so carefully maintained suddenly felt like a cage, and for the first time in years, she wondered if she was truly trapped, or if she had simply refused to see the door standing open. Olivia sat in the quiet solitude of the sunlit living room, her fingers lightly tracing the delicate embroidery of the couch cushion. She had once filled this house with warmth, decorating every corner with love, making sure it felt like a home. But now, as she looked around, she realized how suffocatingly empty it was. The expensive furniture, the grand paintings, the lavish chandeliers, none of it had ever truly belonged to her. Everything was a reflection of Daniel's world, his success, his choices. She had merely been placed inside it, like an accessory he had once cherished but had now grown tired of. The cruel remark he had thrown at her that morning still echoed in her mind. "What do you even do all day?" Olivia had given up her career to support Daniel, to be the wife he had wanted. She had been an accomplished marketing executive, while on her way to making a name for herself before Daniel had convinced her to quit. "You don't need to work," he had told her back then, his arms wrapped around her in the early days of their marriage. "I make enough for both of us. Just focus on us, on our future." And so, she had. She had poured herself into their life, into building a family, only to realize too late that she was the only one who cared. With a sigh, Olivia reached for her phone, scrolling through old emails, searching for something, anything, that reminded her of the woman she used to be. She found messages from former colleagues, invitations to industry events she had ignored, opportunities she had turned down. Regret swelled in her chest like a slow, burning ache. Had she thrown away too much of herself for a man who no longer saw her worth? She bit her lip, forcing herself to push the thoughts aside. There was no use in lamenting the past. But as she looked around at the silence surrounding her, an unsettling thought settled deep in her bones. If she didn't do something soon, her entire future would slip away just as easily as the past had. Dinner that night was like every other night, a quiet, lonely affair. Olivia had stopped setting the table for too long ago, knowing Daniel rarely came home early enough to eat with her. She toyed with the food on her plate, her appetite fading with the weight of her thoughts. She had spent the afternoon reminiscing about the past, sifting through old memories, and for the first time in years, she felt the stirrings of something unfamiliar inside her, anger. How had she allowed herself to become this woman? A shadow of who she once was, reduced to nothing more than a placeholder in Daniel's life. She had convinced herself that staying was the noble thing to do, that love required endurance, but what kind of love was this? A marriage where she was invisible, where her worth was questioned daily? A spark of defiance flickered in her chest, and she grasped onto it tightly, unwilling to let it fade. When Daniel finally walked through the door, much later than he had promised, he barely acknowledged her before heading straight upstairs. Olivia followed, standing in the doorway as he loosened his tie in front of the mirror. "Did you even think about me today?" she asked, her voice calm but firm. Daniel scoffed, shaking his head. "What kind of question is that?" "One that deserves an answer," she replied. "Because I thought about you. I thought about us. About how much I've given up for this marriage, and how little you've given back." Daniel turned, his expression shifting from amusement to irritation. "Oh, here we go. The martyr speech. Olivia, no one forced you to give up anything. You made your choices. If you're unhappy, that's on you." His words were a dagger, cutting through whatever hope she had left. And in that moment, she realized the truth. She was done hoping. The next morning, Olivia woke up before the sun, her heart heavy but resolute. The confrontation with Daniel had solidified something inside her, a truth she could no longer ignore. She needed to leave. Not just physically, but emotionally. She needed to reclaim the pieces of herself that had been buried under years of sacrifice and neglect. But where would she even start? She spent the day making quiet preparations, withdrawing money from her personal savings, what little she had left after years of financial dependency. She packed a single suitcase, carefully selecting the few things that truly mattered. Every movement felt surreal, as though she were watching someone else take charge of her life. But it was real. For the first time in years, she was making a decision for herself. As evening fell, she stood in the doorway of their bedroom, watching Daniel as he scrolled through his phone, oblivious to the storm brewing inside her. "I'm leaving," she said simply. He barely looked up. "Where are you going?" he asked, his voice dismissive. "I mean for good," she clarified. That caught his attention. He frowned, sitting up. "Olivia, don't be ridiculous. You wouldn't last a week without me." She smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Then I guess we'll find out." And with that, she walked out the door. The cold night air hit her face as Olivia stepped onto the empty sidewalk, her suitcase rolling behind her. For the first time in years, she was free, but freedom was terrifying. The weight of uncertainty pressed down on her, but she forced herself to keep walking. She didn't have a destination yet, only the certainty that she could no longer stay. She reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. With a deep breath, she typed a message to an old contact, someone who had once believed in her before she had stopped believing in herself. "I need a job," she wrote. "And I need a fresh start." She hit send. And just like that, her new life began. Olivia sat in the back of the taxi, watching the city lights blur past her window as she clutched her phone tightly in her hand. She had expected hesitation, doubt, maybe even silence, but the response had come almost instantly. "Come see me first thing in the morning. We'll talk." The message was from Vanessa Carter, her former mentor, a woman who had once taken Olivia under her wing when she was an ambitious young marketing professional. Olivia had left that world behind for Daniel, believing that love and marriage were enough to sustain her. But now, sitting in the taxi with nothing but a suitcase and a rapidly beating heart, she realized how foolish she had been. The version of herself that had walked away from that career felt like a stranger, someone she could barely remember. The taxi pulled up to a modest hotel, far from the lavish surroundings she had grown used to. She hesitated before stepping out, her fingers tightening around the handle of her suitcase. She was no longer the wife of a wealthy man, no longer living in a grand house where everything was taken care of. The reality of her situation hit her hard as she checked in, the receptionist barely looking up as she handed over her ID. The room was small, plain, but it was hers, her first real step toward independence. Sitting on the edge of the bed, she let out a slow breath, forcing herself to embrace the fear rather than run from it. Tomorrow, she would see Vanessa. Tomorrow, she would step back into the world she had abandoned. And tomorrow, she would begin proving to herself that Daniel had been wrong. Morning came with the scent of stale coffee and the hum of city life outside her window. Olivia stood before the mirror, studying her reflection with critical eyes. The woman staring back at her looked tired, uncertain, but beneath that, there was a flicker of something else, determination. She ran her fingers through her hair, straightened her blazer, and forced herself to stand taller. She wasn't just walking into Vanessa's office today, she was walking back into the person she had once been. The taxi ride to the towering corporate building felt surreal, and as she stepped through the revolving doors, she was hit by a flood of memories, late nights working on campaigns, the thrill of closing deals, the satisfaction of being valued for her mind rather than just her presence. Vanessa's office was as sleek and intimidating as she remembered, floor-to-ceiling windows framing the bustling skyline. The older woman stood as Olivia entered, arms crossed, an unreadable expression on her face. "I was surprised to hear from you," Vanessa said, her voice cool but not unkind. Olivia swallowed her nerves. "I made a mistake leaving this world. I want back in." Vanessa studied her for a long moment before gesturing to the chair across from her. "Tell me why I should take a chance on you again." Olivia took a deep breath. She had spent years being dismissed, underestimated. But now, for the first time in a long time, she was ready to fight for herself. Olivia's pitch was raw but honest. She didn't try to hide her years away from the workforce or the fact that she had sacrificed her career for a man who no longer respected her. Instead, she focused on what she had learned, her ability to adapt, to organize, to understand people on a deeper level. "I know I have to start from the bottom again," she admitted, her hands folded tightly in her lap. "And I know I have to prove myself. But I'm willing to put in the work. Just give me a chance." Vanessa remained silent for a moment, her sharp eyes studying Olivia's face as if searching for weakness. Then, slowly, she leaned back in her chair, a small smirk playing at her lips. "You always were too stubborn to stay down," she mused. "Fine. There's an opening in the strategy department. Entry level. Low pay. Long hours. You want it?" Relief and gratitude crashed over Olivia all at once, but she forced herself to remain composed. "I do," she said firmly. Vanessa nodded, handing her a folder. "Report here Monday morning. Don't be late. And don't expect any special treatment just because I know you." Olivia took the folder with both hands, her fingers trembling slightly. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't even close to the level she had once reached. But it was a start. As she left the office, a strange feeling settled in her chest, something she hadn't felt in years. It was pride. The weekend passed in a blur of preparation. Olivia spent hours researching, refreshing her knowledge, immersing herself in industry trends she had once followed religiously. She refused to show up on her first day unprepared. The night before she was set to start, she sat in her hotel room, staring at her reflection once more. The fear was still there, coiling tightly in her stomach, but this time it wasn't paralyzing. It was fuel. She could do this. She would do this. And no matter how hard it got, she would never again let herself become the woman Daniel had so easily discarded. Monday morning arrived, and Olivia stepped into the office, her shoulders squared, her chin high. The buzz of the workplace was exhilarating, the clatter of keyboards, the hushed conversations of teams working toward a common goal. She was assigned a desk in the corner, small and unassuming, but it was hers. As she logged into her computer, emails already flooding her inbox, she allowed herself the smallest of smiles. It had been years since she had sat in an office, but as her fingers danced across the keyboard, it felt like she had never left. The first week was brutal. Long hours, relentless deadlines, the constant need to prove herself. Olivia stayed late every night, absorbing everything she could, determined to show Vanessa and herself that she was worth this opportunity. But the exhaustion was different from the kind she had felt in her old life. This wasn't the draining numbness of being unseen and undervalued. This was the exhaustion that came from effort, from growth. It was the exhaustion of someone climbing their way back up after a long fall. And for the first time in years, Olivia welcomed it. By Friday, she had begun to find her rhythm. She completed her first major task, a competitive analysis report, so thoroughly that her supervisor, a stern woman named Elaine, paused as she read through it. "This is impressive," she admitted, glancing up at Olivia. "You've done this before, haven't you?" Olivia met her gaze without hesitation. "A long time ago." Elaine studied her for a moment before nodding. "Keep this up, and you won't be in that corner desk for long." Olivia's chest swelled with something unfamiliar, recognition. It was only a small victory, but after everything she had been through, it felt monumental. As she walked out of the office that evening, the city lights twinkling above her, Olivia allowed herself a deep breath. She wasn't where she wanted to be yet. But she was on her way. And she would never let anyone, least of all Daniel, make her feel small again. Olivia settled into her routine with a quiet determination, her days consumed by meetings, research, and endless reports. Every task was an opportunity to prove herself, and she attacked them with an intensity that left her colleagues both impressed and wary. It had been years since she had worked in an office, but muscle memory kicked in faster than she had expected. Vanessa remained distant, watching from afar but offering little direct feedback. Olivia knew she was being tested. She had always thrived under pressure, but this time, the stakes were personal. This wasn't just about success, it was about reclaiming her identity. Despite her progress, the echoes of her past haunted her in unexpected ways. Simple things, a client's condescending tone, a dismissive glance from a coworker, triggered memories of Daniel's words, of the way he had chipped away at her confidence. But she refused to let those thoughts take root. Every time doubt crept in, she reminded herself of where she had been and how far she had already come. Late at night, when exhaustion threatened to consume her, she repeated a quiet mantra to herself, "I am more than what he made me believe." Friday evening found Olivia still at her desk, long after most of the office had emptied. She stared at the glowing screen, her fingers moving swiftly over the keyboard as she finalized a report Vanessa had asked for. The silence of the office felt comforting, a stark contrast to the hollow quiet of her old home. Here, she was working towards something. Here, she had value. A soft knock at the door made her look up. Vanessa stood there, arms crossed, an unreadable expression on her face. "You're still here," Vanessa observed, stepping inside. Olivia nodded, forcing herself to sit up straighter. "I wanted to make sure everything was perfect before sending it over." Vanessa glanced at the screen, scanning the document with sharp eyes. After a beat, she exhaled. "You've always been like this. Relentless." Olivia hesitated, unsure if it was meant as praise or a warning. Vanessa finally looked at her. "Come to lunch with me on Monday. We need to talk." Olivia's heart pounded, but she kept her expression neutral. "Of course," she replied. The older woman gave her one last look before leaving. Olivia sat still for a long time, wondering what the conversation would bring. Monday arrived with an uneasy weight pressing down on Olivia's chest. She had spent the weekend preparing for every possible scenario, replaying her last real conversation with Vanessa over and over again. Had she been too forward? Was Vanessa reconsidering her place at the company? The thought of being dismissed, of losing the one thing anchoring her right now, sent a cold shiver down her spine. But she wouldn't let fear control her. Not anymore. She arrived at the upscale restaurant 5 minutes early, determined to face whatever was coming with her head held high. Vanessa arrived moments later, sliding into the seat across from Olivia with the same effortless confidence she had always possessed. "I didn't bring you here to talk about work," she said bluntly, waving away the waiter before Olivia could even reach for the menu. "I want to know why you really came back." Olivia hesitated, unsure of how much truth she was ready to share. But something in Vanessa's gaze told her that half-truths wouldn't be enough. So she told her. About Daniel. About the years of sacrifice, the slow erosion of self-worth. About the moment she realized she had become invisible even to herself. When she finished, Vanessa was quiet for a long time before leaning back in her chair with a smirk. "I should have known. You were always too damn strong to stay down for long." The weeks that followed brought a shift Olivia hadn't expected. Vanessa became more present, more engaged, offering guidance and criticism in equal measure. It wasn't favoritism, if anything, the older woman was harder on her than anyone else, but Olivia welcomed the challenge. She thrived under pressure, proving herself time and time again. Slowly, whispers began to circulate through the office. A senior strategist had left unexpectedly, leaving a void in the department. Olivia knew better than to assume anything, but the possibility sent a thrill through her. Could she really rise that quickly? Late one evening, she received an email from Vanessa, conference room. Now. Olivia's pulse quickened as she made her way to the dimly lit room. Vanessa stood by the window, arms crossed, her expression unreadable. "You've done well," she admitted, turning to face Olivia fully. "Better than I expected." Olivia barely had time to process the rare compliment before Vanessa continued. "I'm putting your name in for the strategist position." Olivia's breath caught. "But Vanessa held up a hand. "You'll have competition, and I won't go easy on you. But if you want it, fight for it." Olivia swallowed hard, then nodded. "I will." And she meant it. Olivia threw herself into the challenge with everything she had. The strategist role wouldn't be handed to her, she had to earn it. The selection process was rigorous, requiring her to develop a high-stakes proposal that would be presented to senior executives. She worked late into the night, researching, analyzing, refining every detail until she knew it inside out. It was a test not just of her abilities but of her resilience, of how much she was willing to push for what she wanted. Every moment of exhaustion, every doubt that tried to creep in, she fought off with sheer determination. The day of the presentation arrived, and Olivia stepped into the conference room with steady hands and a clear mind. Across from her sat 3 other candidates, all equally prepared, all vying for the same position. Vanessa watched from the back of the room, impassive. Olivia took a deep breath, steadied herself, and began. She spoke with confidence, weaving data and strategy into a compelling vision. By the time she finished, the room was silent. One executive finally leaned forward, nodding slowly. "Impressive," he murmured. "Very impressive." As she stepped out of the room, Olivia exhaled, feeling something she hadn't in years, certainty. No matter the outcome, she had proven something invaluable to herself. She was back. The wait for the decision felt longer than Olivia had expected. Every day, whispers circled the office, speculations about who would claim the strategist position. She tried to drown out the noise, focusing on her tasks, but the uncertainty gnawed at her. She had poured everything into that presentation, into proving she belonged here, and now the outcome was beyond her control. Vanessa remained unreadable, offering no hints. Olivia knew better than to ask. Vanessa didn't entertain weakness, and Olivia refused to show any. She had come too far to let doubt creep in now. When the email finally arrived, her heart pounded as she clicked it open. A single line stared back at her, "Report to Vanessa's office at noon." The words gave nothing away, but they sent a rush of adrenaline through her veins. She stood in front of Vanessa's door minutes before the meeting, steadying her breath. When she stepped inside, Vanessa was leaning against her desk, arms crossed. "Congratulations," she said simply. "You got the job." Relief crashed over Olivia like a tidal wave, but she kept her expression composed. "Thank you," she said firmly. Vanessa smirked. "Don't thank me yet. Now, you actually have to prove you deserve it." The promotion didn't come with celebration, it came with pressure. Olivia found herself thrown into high-level meetings, expected to contribute alongside seasoned strategists who had spent years in the field. There was no easing into the role, Vanessa made that clear. "You wanted this," she reminded Olivia during one particularly grueling session. "So act like you belong here." Olivia took the words to heart, pushing herself harder than ever, absorbing everything like a sponge. She arrived early, stayed late, and refused to let anyone, especially herself, question whether she was capable. Despite her determination, there were moments of doubt. Some colleagues eyed her with skepticism, murmuring about how quickly she had climbed the ranks. The whispers of favoritism stung, even though she knew Vanessa would never hand her anything she hadn't earned. One afternoon, after an intense presentation where a senior executive had grilled her on financial projections, Olivia slumped at her desk, rubbing her temples. Vanessa walked past but stopped, her voice low. "If they're doubting you, good. That means they're watching. Now make sure they never forget why." Olivia exhaled, squared her shoulders, and returned to work. Weeks passed in a blur of late nights and high expectations. Olivia felt herself transforming, sharpening, growing into the role with every challenge. She wasn't just keeping up, she was excelling. When a major client threatened to leave over a competitor's aggressive pricing, Olivia crafted a counterproposal so compelling that not only did they stay, but they expanded their contract. The victory sent a ripple through the office. People who had once doubted her began to take notice. Even Elaine, her former supervisor, stopped by her desk, nodding in approval. "Not bad," she muttered before walking away. The weight of her progress settled over Olivia one evening as she sat in her now much larger office, reviewing financial reports. The woman who had once been dismissed as nothing more than a housewife was now a respected strategist in a leading firm. The thought brought a rare smile to her lips. But just as she allowed herself that moment of satisfaction, her phone buzzed. A name she hadn't seen in months flashed on the screen: Daniel. Her stomach twisted. She hesitated before answering, keeping her voice cool. "What do you want?" His pause was almost imperceptible. "We need to talk." Olivia had imagined this moment more times than she could count. The day Daniel would realize what he had lost, the day he would come crawling back, full of regret. But as she sat across from him at the upscale restaurant he had chosen, she felt none of the emotions she had once expected. No longing, no sadness. Only curiosity. He looked the same, immaculately dressed, exuding the confidence that had once drawn her in. But there was something beneath the surface now, a crack in the facade. "You've changed," he said after the waiter left. Olivia tilted her head. "And you haven't." He sighed, swirling the whiskey in his glass. "Look, Olivia, he hesitated, then forced a smile. "I've been hearing about you. People talk. It's impressive, what you've done." Olivia remained silent, waiting. She knew him well enough to recognize when he was maneuvering towards something. "I was wrong," he finally admitted. "I shouldn't have treated you the way I did. The words should have meant something. A year ago, they would have shattered her. But now, they felt hollow." She met his gaze, unshaken. "You were wrong about a lot of things." His jaw tightened, but he forced another smile. "Maybe we could start over." For a moment, Olivia let the words hang between them, studying him carefully. There was a time when she would have grasped at this opportunity, desperate for validation. But now, she saw through him with crystal clarity. He wasn't here because he loved her. He was here because she was no longer the woman he could control. "Start over?" she echoed, a slow smirk forming. "Daniel, you left me with nothing, told me I was nothing. And now, because I built myself back up, you want me back?" His confidence faltered for the first time. "That's not what I meant." She leaned forward, her voice calm but sharp. "I don't need your approval. I don't need your regret. I don't need you." He stared at her, clearly struggling to process the shift in power. For years, he had held the upper hand. But not anymore. Olivia stood, tossing a few bills onto the table. "Enjoy your dinner, Daniel." As she walked away, she didn't look back. She had spent too many years looking back. The future was waiting, and this time, she was walking toward it on her own terms. Olivia walked out of the restaurant with her head high, the evening air crisp against her skin. The encounter with Daniel should have left her shaken, but instead, she felt lighter. For years, she had let his words define her worth, but now she saw the truth: he had never been the powerful one. He had only been as strong as the control he had over her, and now that control was gone. She reached for her phone, dialing Vanessa's number without hesitation. "I'm ready for more," she said the moment Vanessa answered. A low chuckle came through the receiver. "Good. Because I have something in mind." The next morning, Olivia stepped into Vanessa's office, finding the older woman leaning against her desk with a knowing smirk. "There's an international client coming in next week," Vanessa began. "High profile, high stakes. They want someone fresh, someone with a sharp perspective to present our proposal." Olivia's heart pounded. "You mean me?" Vanessa shrugged. "Unless you think you're not ready." Olivia straightened her posture, her voice unwavering. "I am." Vanessa nodded, satisfied. "Then don't disappoint me." The week leading up to the presentation was a whirlwind. Olivia buried herself in research, analyzing every aspect of the client's business. She worked late into the night, refining her approach, ensuring that every detail of her proposal was flawless. The weight of the opportunity pressed on her, but unlike before, she didn't let doubt creep in. This wasn't just about impressing a client, it was about proving, once and for all, that she belonged here. That she was more than the woman Daniel had once dismissed. When the day of the meeting arrived, Olivia stood in the boardroom, facing a panel of executives who had the power to make or break the deal. She took a steady breath before launching into her presentation. Her voice was clear, her confidence unwavering as she laid out the strategy she had crafted. She anticipated their concerns before they voiced them, countered every objection with precision. As she finished, silence filled the room. Then, the lead executive leaned forward, nodding slowly. "This is impressive," he said. "We'll be in touch." Olivia walked out of that meeting knowing she had already won. The news came faster than expected. By the next morning, Vanessa called Olivia into her office, her expression unreadable. "They signed," she said simply. "Full contract, long-term partnership. And they want you leading the account." Olivia's breath caught. "Me?" Vanessa nodded. "You earned it." The weight of those words settled over Olivia, not as pressure, but as validation. She had spent years being invisible, her efforts disregarded. But now, she wasn't just seen, she was essential. The celebration was brief, as Vanessa was never one for sentimentality. "Don't let this go to your head," she warned. "Success can disappear as fast as it comes. Stay sharp." Olivia nodded, already thinking about her next steps. This was just the beginning. She left the office that evening with a quiet sense of triumph, but also a hunger for more. She had climbed her way back up, but she wasn't stopping here. If Daniel had ever believed she was nothing without him, he was about to see just how wrong he had been. The next few months moved quickly. Olivia became the lead strategist on the new account, her reputation solidifying as one of the firm's rising stars. Her days were packed with meetings, negotiations, and high-level discussions, but she thrived in the chaos. Each success reinforced what she already knew: she had never needed Daniel. He had needed her. And now, while she soared, he was left in the wake of his own arrogance. The thought didn't bring her satisfaction, it simply confirmed what she had already accepted. It wasn't until one evening, while reviewing a new proposal, that Olivia received an unexpected email. The subject line was simple: "We should talk." The sender? Daniel. A wry smile tugged at her lips. She debated ignoring it, but curiosity won. "About what?" she replied. His response came within minutes. "You'll see. Meet me tomorrow." Olivia closed her laptop, shaking her head. Whatever he wanted, she already knew the answer. But this time, she would let him see it. She met Daniel in the same restaurant where their last conversation had taken place, but this time, she felt no nerves, no lingering resentment. She was no longer the woman desperate for his validation. He, on the other hand, looked uneasy, his usual confidence slightly frayed. "Olivia," he greeted, forcing a smile. "You look different." She tilted her head. "I am." She took her seat, watching as he fidgeted with his drink. "I made a mistake," he admitted after a long silence. "I thought you needed me. But I see now, it was the other way around." Olivia let his words settle, but they didn't stir anything in her. No satisfaction, no desire for revenge, just clarity. "You were right about one thing," she finally said. "I was nothing when I was with you. Because I let myself be. But that's over now." She stood, tossing a few bills onto the table. "Goodbye, Daniel." As she walked away, she felt no weight on her shoulders, no lingering ghosts of the past. She had already won. The weeks after her final conversation with Daniel passed in a blur of accomplishments. Olivia hardly thought about him anymore, too consumed by the relentless pace of her new responsibilities. She traveled frequently, meeting with high-profile clients, closing deals that others in her firm had deemed impossible. Every victory solidified her reputation, and soon, she was no longer just a strategist, she was a force to be reckoned with. People respected her, not because of who she had been, but because of who she had become. The satisfaction that came from that realization was unlike anything she had ever known. One evening, after returning from a successful negotiation, Vanessa called her into her office. The older woman studied her carefully, as if measuring how far Olivia had come. "You've exceeded expectations," Vanessa admitted, her voice free of its usual sharpness. "I knew you had potential, but I didn't expect this." Olivia smirked, leaning back in her chair. "Neither did I. But I'm not stopping now." Vanessa chuckled, shaking her head. "Good. Because I have an offer for you. But only if you think you're ready for something bigger." Olivia's pulse quickened. "Tell me." Vanessa slid a thick folder across the desk, her gaze steady. "We're expanding overseas. New offices, new leadership roles. I want you heading the London division." The words sent a jolt through Olivia. London. An opportunity beyond anything she had imagined. A chance to build something from the ground up. She flipped through the documents, absorbing the details. It was a challenge, an entirely new level of responsibility, but she had never been one to back down. She glanced up at Vanessa, her decision already made. "When do I start?" Vanessa smirked. 2 months. You'll need time to transition your current accounts, prepare the move. Olivia nodded, but her mind was already working ahead, planning her next steps. There was no hesitation, no fear, just the thrill of possibility. That night, as she walked through the city she had fought so hard to rebuild herself in, she realized something. This wasn't just about career advancement. This was a clean slate, a chance to step into a future unburdened by the past. She was no longer running from something. She was running towards something. As Olivia began preparing for her move, word of her promotion spread quickly. Colleagues who had once doubted her now looked at her with admiration or envy. Elaine, her former supervisor, pulled her aside one afternoon, her expression unreadable. "You really did it," she said, shaking her head. "Didn't think you'd last a year, let alone surpass us all." Olivia chuckled, though there was no malice in it. "I didn't think so either. But here we are." Elaine sighed, then offered a rare smile. "Good luck out there. Not that you'll need it." Packing up her office felt surreal. Every file, every notebook was a reminder of how far she had come. She had walked into this company with nothing, no confidence, no sense of self-worth. And now, she was walking out as a leader, as someone people recognized. It wasn't just about proving Daniel wrong anymore. It was about proving herself right. The thought made her pause, a slow smile forming. She had spent years doubting whether she could stand on her own. Now, she knew she could. On her last evening in the city, Olivia found herself standing outside the restaurant where she had last seen Daniel. She hadn't planned to come here, but something about this place felt like closure. She wasn't here to see him, she had nothing left to say. Instead, she simply stood for a moment, letting the memories of who she had been dissolve into the night air. She wasn't that woman anymore. She never would be again. With one last glance at the familiar street, she turned and walked away, not looking back. The next morning, as she boarded her flight to London, she felt a sense of excitement she hadn't known in years. She was stepping into the unknown, but for the first time, that didn't scare her. She had built herself from the ground up, piece by piece, and there was nothing left to fear. As the plane took off, she closed her eyes and let out a breath. This wasn't just the start of a new job. It was the start of the life she had always been meant to live. The moment Olivia stepped into her new office in London, she knew she had made the right decision. The view from the top floor was breathtaking, the energy in the air electric. She had spent so much time proving herself, fighting to reclaim what had been taken from her. And now, she was here, standing at the helm of something greater than she had ever imagined. The assistant assigned to her knocked gently on the door, handing her the agenda for the week. "Your first executive meeting is in an hour," she said. Olivia took the folder, nodding. "I'll be ready." As she settled into her chair, she allowed herself a single moment of reflection. The woman who had once been discarded, humiliated, made to feel small, she was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, wiser, untouchable. Daniel would never know this version of her. And that was fine. He was nothing more than a footnote in her story, a reminder of who she had once been and who she would never be again. With a steady breath, Olivia opened the folder and smiled. Her story was just beginning.